there ever an occasion where there were people swimming in the pond, or is that completely apocryphal? That never happened.
Which pond?
Well, there was a kind of a family myth that he had been fired from H.C. Frick because he was benevolent and allowed the workers to swim in the settling pond at the mine.
No, I doubt the settling pond would have been it, because there'd be so much acid in that. But the other kinds of ponds that were available, he probably either swam in and enjoyed and permitted other employees to swim in the pond where he had subsequent responsibilities at different plants. Because after he left Frick, he then was worked with American Radiator at a place called Humphreys. And they had ponds there, which are part of the accumulation for water to work on the coke ovens, to put the fire out at the coke ovens.
Wow, it's an interesting myth. It's a lovely myth, but it's a myth.
Well, it's family. Well, besides, you have to understand something. You and anyone else participating in this, as I know, we're trying to get something, you might say, I'm the only survivor except for Aunt Tech. And I can say any damn thing, and so that'll perpetuate any myth you wanted to have.
When did that stop happening? I mean, why you
Hey,
being the
no questions.
Oh,
No
sorry.
questions from Brown. Okay, wait a minute.
Right.
Just wait 29 minutes.
It
Hey,
never
let
stopped
me
you
let
when
you know
all,
that,
all your siblings were
let,
alive.
let me let you know that Ann Tech is moderating, Uncle Jim, so you've got
Wait, has
thank-
Ann joined us? Is
Ann
Ann-
Tech is on the audio, so she's moderating Uncle Jim to make sure everything stays correct.
Well, we welcome Ann Tech. Dad, this is a surprise. Ann Tech is joining us. We didn't want to give you too much advance notice. We wanted to make sure you were on the call, okay? So Ann Tech, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Say loud,
Awesome.
bye.
She says hi. She's trying to get that.
Very.
Heck, I'm coming down next month.
My voice.
She's come down. He's talking to you. Uncle Jim, can you say hello?
Hey, Jim,
Hi, Tech, how are you, honey?
you're just as good looking as ever.
Well, I wish I wish we could do this more often, and especially to be directly with you. I miss you very much and love you.
Oh, aren't you sweet?
Thank you. Welcome, Ann Tech. The next question has to do with Bopaw's father, Abraham. The question is, did you have a nickname for him like we did for Nana and Bopaw? Did you have a nickname for your grandfather, Abraham?
I never knew. Wait, which you're talking about? My
Bopaw.
great-grandfather?
No, I think just your grandfather, Bopaw's father,
Oh, okay,
Abraham.
yeah. No, I only knew him as a Grandpap. And I think most of my siblings did also. It was the society's customs in those days was pretty much along those lines.
Ann Tech, did you have a nickname, or is that the same answer that you would have for Abraham, Bopaw's father?
Do you have, let me find it. Hold on a second. Let me ask her.
If I did.
She can't remember if she did. She can.
Okay, thank you. So apparently Abraham, Bopaw's father, was married to Marie for 61 years. The question is, their 60th anniversary was October 17, 1942. Was there a family celebration, or was the war first and foremost at that time?
Well, I think the war was foremost in everybody's mind, but the Abraham and the children didn't seem to be, my recollection, have any festivities to celebrate the anniversary of their wedding. All I can remember with grandmother Kelley that she died shortly thereafter, and I remember being one of the servers at the funeral, and I couldn't stop holding back my tears.
Were you very close to her?
Not particularly. It was just the idea. I think being aware of death, and I wouldn't be seeing this person again in the future. The closest we would get, at least, I don't know what Tech's feeling are, but our father would take, and Sunday we would be driving down to the house and visit with Abraham and the dear wife. You mentioned her first name, and I don't even remember thinking of it in that sense. But we would sort of just have a little visit while Dad and everybody else would just be on the side, and we would be present to pay our due respects to our grandparents.
And here's a question about the Greensburg house on Westmoreland Avenue.
Yes.
And the question is, when did Beaupa and Nana purchase the house on Westmoreland Avenue?
I think that was about 1912, 13, 14. Tech may have a handle on that. She was probably alive then.
You think how old I was.
She does remember. She does remember as well.
And then do you remember when they purchased the farm?
I think the farm would have been in the 1950, about there. Dick was very instrumental in that, because he was helping Opa with booking and things, and that Dick found out through some contact, I don't know whether it's through Bella's connections or what, that the farm in Harford County and Maryland was available, and they bought it. I think they bought it sight unseen, and then I probably had more to do with it as far as physical input, because I had summers and vacations, and I would go up and try to do some things, which rightfully so, I was criticized for spending too damn much money.
So it was a working farm?
Well, it was working, but I don't think it was that successfully in its operation, because we had a tenant farmer supposedly taking care of it, but again, we were all in absentee ownership, and so it was a beautiful place, and I wish everybody had an opportunity to know more about it and see about it. That's another thing I'm going to do if I win the lottery. We're going to have a reunion up at the farm. I'll have to buy the damn thing back.
Yeah. Did your family visit it often?
Not that much. It was very disappointing, because the Dad being in Congress and everything, and as you study the line, it was not, it was not an approximate line between Greensburg and Washington, but just the opposite direction, so that Dick and Bella, I think, got up there more than anybody. I got up there, made hay and stuff like that, and started to get some people do some work on the property, but it was a failed adventure for, I think, Grandpap, Opa, and the few times that they were there, they had a great time, especially Grandmother Kelley.
Oh, that's nice. And speaking of Nana, a question is, how many siblings did Nana Kelley have? Ella Bates, how many siblings?
She was one of, she was the youngest of 8, so she had 7 siblings.
Wow.
And some of whom were born in the old country, and the rest of them were born here.
And the old country, that's a question. I had a memory that Nana Kelley, Ella Bates, had an Austro-Hungarian passport, but I don't know if that's a family myth. Do you know what the old country was where some of her siblings were born?
Well, I don't, but our dear, your dear cousin Mary Lynn got some good book when she was traveling within the last couple of years, and just trying to look up some people up there, and the old country, so to speak.
So the old country was Betz, B-E-T-Z, in Hungary.
Well,
I learned when I was stationed in Germany.
that's correct.
Fünfkirche auf Deutsch.
Pardon?
In
no,
Germany, in German, the name of the town was Fünfkirche, or five churches.
It was Fünfkirchen. That's correct.
Yeah.
I have, I remember. Yeah.
Wait. Who's that beautiful woman next to you?
It's my girlfriend. Don't tell my wife.
It's great, wonderful, so good to see all of you.
This is being recorded.
Anyway,
Excellent.
the question is, yes, and so we never really had any confirmation, and I don't think any other of the Bateses have bothered to get into that very much at all. You know, going in and checking one's genealogy is not something that was done that early on, because people didn't like it, you know, because we had a lot of migrations from those countries, and so people didn't want to generate what was not necessarily particularly attractive.
Did Mary Lynn's research and some research that's been done by folks on this call, they've been very steadfast.
Yeah.
So there was a Betz and there was also a Butzel. There was Pécs, P-E-C-S, Hungary, a very old town. And then the Butzel birthplace, if I remember correctly, was Vienna, Austria. And manifests indicate, and some history that was done, research, indicates that Nana's grandparents were born as Jewish people. And I wondered, was there ever any discussion about Nana's background, given the fact that she was honored in 1945, I believe, as the Catholic Mother of the Year?
There's absolutely no references to her background in that, but that came about because she had 5 sons in the service at the time during the war, and that was the you know, the basic motivation as being Catholic and all that, and the patriotism went with it. And I don't believe, frankly, that whenever the 2 of them traveled over there, that they ever got in. I'm not aware that they ever did any of that. And the only one possibly that may have had a handle on that would have been Uncle Hill, because he sort of tried to do some traveling and aware of all that afterwards, because he had some familiarity when he was up there in the war.
That's right. Going back to the United States, a question is, what was the time period approximately that Beaupas worked at the mine or for the mine? Do you recall?
Well, which, his own mine, or are you talking about?
Hey, we don't know. I mean, if there was more than one mine, this is good information.
Well, I alluded to you the fact that how he, after he graduated from or attended West Point, he was very attracted to friendships of the Lynches, and in turn the Fricks, because the old Lynch was a vice president of Frick and Greensburgers, and so they knew Dad, and he was a known product, and so that when we went to work with Frick, Frick had a multitudinous number of mines and coke oven plants, and so that I couldn't begin to tell you those because I don't know them all, but that it was only really, you might say that right during the late 30s, he became more personally and financially interested in a place called Old Basin coal mine, and where they had ovens as well. And I visited that and that mine and went down there. It was a slope mine to get into the vein of the coal. And it wasn't that great a mine, but it was a successful one. And then later on, he joined in with some other people to try to expand. And they didn't necessarily work out that well, and collegiality between them. And so he ended up going with Mammoth Coal and Coke Company, which was in Mammoth, PA. And it was an old mine that they had reopened. You have to understand how coal was, because the old deep industrial area, you had these mines that then it was a question of sometimes going in and reopening them, and to get, because it was good coal, very metallurgical coal, the dearest coal. Coal. The trouble with coal is most people think that all coal is like gold or 18 karat gold, whatever, but it's not. And it varies so extensively on qualities and variations. And so this was metallurgical coal, and it was very successful during the war. You might say that it was probably more of a contributing factor to his enjoying more liberal use of money. I think it would be able to buy the farm like he did, and I think trying to take care. It was you have to bear in mind they didn't have a great deal of money. They had, I think, he always had a good job, because of what he had. He's been hired, as I said to you, as a superintendent of a mine under Frick, but and so that made do. But when it came to the for education, I think how many of all of you, your parents, aunts and uncles, were educated by the GI Bill, basically, in the sense that that was passed, and so that the veterans all get a benefit from it. And as far as I know, I was aware that all of them benefited from it. So, but the point, I guess, is that Mammoth. I spent a couple of summers working at Summers at Mammoth, and it was. When I said, what I was doing, I was in high school, and I was trying to be, going to be the big football player and build up my body. And so, they threw me up on a coal pile and moved the pile, and the union started bitching because I was working too hard. That didn't turn me off unions.
Yeah, good
Okay.
job.
On a side note, Mom mentions that Tanty was from Mammoth, Pennsylvania,
That's correct.
because her husband
That's
worked in the mines.
Yeah, I forget how many children she had, but she had one.
Six.
Huh?
Six girls.
Is that what it was?
She had six girls, had one son that she lost.
Okay, well, I got to tell you that they lived in. I visited there many times. There was a company. It was a company patch town that was very common for industries like that, in the sense that they're very remote physically. They didn't have anything, but they had a company store that was owned by the company, and people had to use their credits, from employment, the chits, that's I'd call them, at the company store. At the end of the period, they'd have just enough maybe to pay rent. Most of them were in these wooden clapper duplexes. Didn't have any indoor plumbing. It was all outside plumbing.
They were nice, though. I used to visit out there.
Well, they
Go
were,
visit them, yeah,
well, people made them very comfortable. There's no question about it.
yeah.
It was their home. And,
Yeah.
what the heck? So it was just,
It was a great family.
yeah.
I remember Muriel. That's the only person of her daughters I think I ever remember meeting.
Well, she
Well-
had, and they're all lovely. They're all lovely young ladies.
When we went out, was it Muriel?
They were polite and,
That she took her in.
Oh, you
and-
didn't know Muriel.
Go ahead.
The mother, Tanny, worked for I guess the WPA. Jim, is that right? The WPA, and they worked in Greensburg.
I'm not aware that she worked for the,
Well,
that-
that's what she did. She did some sewing. She'd work all week, and then she'd spend the night at our house, and she'd go home then for the weekend with her children. But that's how Tanny became a part of our family.
oh, great.
Tanty taught me how to do crossword puzzles and how
Yeah.
to
She
do
was-
tomatoes.
She was with us, what, about 50 years, wasn't she?
Yes, I'd say so. Yeah, she was,
Yeah.
Tanty is in one of the two films, or maybe both, that Chris Kelley, Uncle Paul's son Chris, very nicely took from, I don't know, 8mm or whatever, and put it on the family site for Facebook, and he also has sent it and put them on YouTube for people who don't have Facebook. And I have sent links for the two films out to a lot of the folks on the call, and I want to thank Chris for those films. Dad was able to watch one or two of them today, and I'd love to know your thoughts, Dad, about seeing the footage from your family from 1953, which was the 40th wedding anniversary of Beaupaw and Nana. And then the other film, if you saw that one also, 1963, when we all got together in Kenwood to send off the Schellenbergs. That's Aunt Kate, the 8th youngest of Beaupaw and Nana's child, and her husband and big family, as they left the DC area and went to Florida. And I know for me, seeing those films was very heartwarming, but also incredibly poignant. So I wondered if you had any thoughts about those films.
well, yes, in the sense that I wish Aunt Tech and all our other siblings would have had an opportunity to see those things, because to sit here today and see those films that were made, 50 and 60 years ago, it's frustrating in the sense because you want to reach out and touch them and talk with them. That's impossible, of course. And so with the idea that they're there and for posterity, and you recognize that what a wonderful family we had, and I suppose you still have to say we have, but at that time it was just everybody got along so well and lovingly and happily, and I suppose the family would do the same thing now. If I win the lottery and buy that farm and get up there, we'll find out.
And just two last final questions. The first is, and I'd love Aunt Tech
Figure
also,
change to Uncle Jim, see what he's listed in.
what would be, do you have like a favorite memory from your childhood?
They're asking you too.
Well, it's interesting that you posed that, because Aunt Tech and I were speaking on the phone not too long ago, and we had the same recollection of the joy and the pleasure, and it was at Christmas time. And one of the things is that, I alluded earlier, we didn't have, there wasn't a lot of money for us.
we talked about this.
Beaupaw got into the the coal business right before the war. But your mother had a sister, Aunt Ann, who was Ann Canan, whose husband did reasonably well in the sense that he was a politician, always had a good position, had been a U.S. Marshal in Pittsburgh, and had been very active in the structure of things. And he, you might say, lived better than they did. And they didn't have any children. And so Ann, through her love for her sister Ella, our mother, and for us children, always made a point of buying an adequate amount of Christmas presents for our whole family. And they didn't drive, but Uncle Canan would hire a taxi cab and load up all these presents that had all been wrapped up and everything else, and drive to our house, and they'd come in and load them up on the dining room table. And mostly Kathleen and I, because we were the youngest, but Tech probably got some of that duty as well. But the rest of the family was all gathered in the living room. And one by one, we younger ones would have to pick up so that one after another for those who need a present for equity distribution. And that seemed to be what Tech and I at least had. I'm not so Tech, I'm sorry to be speaking for you, honey, but I couldn't help but think of that in response to Melissa's question. But it truly was a joyful, wonderful thing, because somehow I guess we knew that that made our Christmas so great, and that we didn't have that otherwise for us.
There are usually about 4 or 5 gifts for each person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they would sit there, and if somebody didn't get something for a while, they'd send somebody out to get something for them. And oh, it was a wonderful time.
Yeah, I agree.
And the last question I have, and then it's open to the floor. We have a question from one of Uncle Dick's kids who wants to know what happened to Westmoreland County, because it's entirely Republican.
Well, the same thing you can say what's happened to Delaware County, Montgomery County outside of Philadelphia. Social mores have changed a lot. They were as diehard Republican as are now over the Democratic. And so maybe, it's so much of the economic times in the past. When we're talking about the Kelley family back then, all labor was manual labor. And that's when the unions started coming in and try to get organized. And so that there was a sentiment that was quite uniform for our whole society. And so we were Democratic then because that were the numbers. You had the labor, most of whom now were labor organization. And I think it's fair to say that the whole country acted that way many times. Studying the big cities, where the machines all have been, many of which are still there, Democratic, but it changes too with the economics and the social mores. So nothing's really happened other than the fact that times are different. People are different. I doubt that I could be elected in Westmoreland County today, like I was. I happen to be the beneficiary of the times. When I ran the first time, I still had a good name from my father, and so when I got elected, and we had some progression with my colleague serving in the county commissioner's office. Did many things which we didn't run as part of our campaign, But we established the community college and restructured, established the election bureau and so many things. We updated the county home, so to speak, those who were without, and made it decent. And I just can't. There's so many things that could come to my mind more so. But the fact is, if we've been running on that basis, because when we did try to implement it once we were in office, there was great rebellion among the people against the establishment of community college, because they said we're going to bankrupt the county and all this. Well, on issues today, you have the same thing in many respects. You have today people are trying to make sure that the first parts of college can be paid for by the government. But if you look at the history of things, it started off, there wasn't any public school system. But once they had established it, they felt they had to establish something as public, and it started off being, a grade school.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually became the same thing for high school. And so now you have a lot of aids, government aids for the college degree. And the same thing. It was pressure now because the knowledge is available and out in the reservoir of knowledge that people have much to see and get.
Maryland.
The cost of those things becomes
Thank you. Ann Tech, thank you. Dad, thank you. This is the conclusion of the first 30 minutes when I asked questions we had compiled earlier. It's now open to the floor. Thank you very much. So who has a question for Ann Tech or Uncle Jim?
That can't be right. We're on time.
All
right, I have a question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good. I was reading some history of the New Baltimore area, and this was sometime between the Civil War and the First War. And there was a huge famine and all of the wheat was killed. And it was a very scary, traumatic thing for the whole area. And then someone said, wait a minute, it's not too late to grow buckwheat. And so buckwheat apparently pulled everybody in the area out. It was a big economic win. So my question is this: do you remember being served buckwheat when you were little? And is that something that would have been related to the famine? And how many other people ended up doing that? I know my dad made a lot of buckwheat pancakes.
Well, I also had buckwheat, but I don't have any recollection of it being connected with any of the health problems in the New Baltimore area. But it sounds like your story is as good as anybody's. But there's another part of our life that's important. I want to make mention about that area, because I've never been able to get specific, but I think on review, and Aunt Tech would know, she wouldn't know, but the avenue would be that about that area that you mentioned, the New Baltimore area, that there were, Aunt Dode knew this, but like most things with Aunt Dode, I wish the heck I'd have written them down, because I have this faint recollection, but there were two
in the upper right corner.
Pardon?
Change the view.
There were two what? Who was that? Because you may have been adding something very important, but of which I wasn't aware. But there were two distant relatives of ours on the Kelley side who walked all the way from Bedford to Washington, D.C. and signed up to be visitation nuns. And I tend to believe that if they were true, but I don't believe it. Aunt Dode probably was, I know she was honestly correct in most cases, but I think that Dad would have been aware of it. And then, of course, Tech and Kathleen both attended visitation where these nuns would have been in their vocation. But that's a collateral matter. As far as the buckwheat goes, yes, but I think it's probably more broad than that. The buckwheat use.
Yeah.
I have a question. This is Hank.
Yeah.
And Uncle Jim, you're probably more of an authority to answer this question than Tech, but she certainly can jump in. But before I ask, is that Bill that's there with Tech?
What?
No, that's
No.
Jim's here.
Jim, okay. Hey,
Yes.
thank you for doing this between you and Brendan helping Jim and Dick and Melissa getting this whole thing set up. Just a fantastic job. Thank you so much. Now, my
Thank you.
question is, and I think this is a kind of a good example, a good sampling of the people that are on the call here. Why do you think that at this point in our lives, the female cousins are so much better looking and better prepared than the male cousins? I don't get it. I'm looking across the screen and I can't believe this. The guys look all decrepit and the girls look great. How is that?
Well, let me give you a better look, Hank.
Yeah, see, there you go, Bob.
All right.
Thanks.
Just wanna-
I like Pat's expression.
Well,
And how is this a new phenomenon?
I guess maybe I hadn't thought about making any count of this thing, but maybe you just have more girls than boys in that generation. I haven't thought about it.
Now, it's actually pretty even. I've done the calculation on that. It's a pretty even number. I think there are a couple more girls, but not that many.
Okay, not enough to make that material difference.
No, and
The only good-looking guy is Uncle Jim on the screen.
that's exactly right.
That's exactly right. Well,
I would like to thank, I'd like to thank personally Uncle Jim for the cases of beer that he brought down to Nana's place and put in downtown, downstairs refrigerator. Never seemed to last very long there, but I do appreciate that, Uncle Jim. With the salami too, the salami is always a good good touch there. Thank you.
I have a question, if I may.
Certainly,
Jim,
yes.
you told me once upon a time that you stopped in New Baltimore at a gentleman's club. I'm not sure what a gentleman's club is, but did you run into any of the ancestors of the people that lived there that maybe were related? I know I had the Riffles and the Lucans and.
Yeah, I'm sure I did, but it was a gentleman's club. What it was a sportsman's club. And I had on my trips back and forth with frequency to Greensburg to Harrisburg, I ran into a friend of mine, I guess, who told me about the sportsman's club in New Baltimore. So on one occasion where I had left early enough for, you might say for the east destination, on Route 30, I just went down the hill and I went into the place I felt I could find this club. And so I rapped on a door and it was someone I didn't know. They didn't know me, but it wasn't the club, but they were able to tell me where the club was. And so I drove to follow those instructions. I followed down the road, went to a blind dead end and turned left and went up there, and this club's all by itself. And the cars are out there, and I went up and rapped on the door and played the poor pity me routine about that my father had been born in New Baltimore, and so, so I went through that. And one fellow invited me in as his guest, because it was a membership only. And after a few hours and things, I was able to buy drinks for everyone else. But I did meet many people, but I don't know, the conversation never got to the point where I would have a similar relationship with them and my heritage, except one person I met happened to be and know someone who resided in that area who was from Greensburg and a former neighbor of ours. So that was about as close as I got to finding out anybody. I used to think, I later on one time stopped at the St. Thomas, the church.
Yeah.
And tried to find out more. I didn't spend enough time with the matters, but it was, God, it was just.
Margo wants to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Opa, I have a question.
Okay.
It's Margo, so answer wisely. Who is your favorite grandchild?
You don't have to answer that. Uncle
Opa,
Tim.
that is
We
a
all know.
trap. No, it's me.
It's me, Opa.
No, goddaughter / granddaughter trumps.
Is the proper English on this matter not it's me, that rather it should be I?
Ooh, and for that she loses points.
I'm sorry, Opa. Who's giving you a great grandchild?
Well, that's Caroline, and she's she is going to be, she's a expected mother for May, and that's going to make me
Right, that's right.
a grandfather.
You deflected the question, but that's okay.
Okay, you're close to it. Okay. By the way, Margo, I've been meaning to get a hold of Mike, and Mike is her close friend, and he gave me a book for Christmas.
Yes, he did.
Oh, Ryan.
Pardon?
Ryan.
Ryan, I'm sorry. Well, I got some, anyway. Ryan gave me the book. I knew immediately I was going to like it because it was.
Oh, you didn't like it.
No, he did like
I
it.
do.
Oh, you did.
Oh, very much. You think I'd be telling publicly, been making this disclaimer like that? No, come on, man.
Well, he's not here, so he wouldn't know.
Well, I'm counting on you to tell him.
Okay, I'll tell him.
Please.
I think you know where to find him.
Okay.
I'll
Mary-
let him know.
Mary Lynn, do you have a question for Dad, given all the genealogical research?
You know, I really don't, except I was looking for an invitation that Mom and the Dad and Aunt Marcy got from FDR's inauguration. And I think that it was the original invitations and to Roosevelt's inauguration. And I think I gave it to Uncle Jimmy. Do you remember it, Uncle Jimmy? I can't find it.
I have a vivid recollection in the sense that related to that. I remember being at that inauguration.
You do. That's wonderful.
But then there were two more inaugurations as well, and so I can't address which one to which you're referring, but I suspect that either one. Yes, you know, it was not unusual for congressional families to be included in you know, the festivities in that era because they want to have as many people as possible. And Washington D.C. was not that well populated, and so it could well be that they were there. And so but I don't know to which one you're referring, Marilyn, but
I'm thinking, well, would it be 40?
well, yes, the first one would be 30s, and then the second would be the 40s. And but I think that's when Opal would be, I mean, Grandpap would be there. So it would have been the second one at least.
So one of my favorite memorabilia from Bhopal is a set of license plates that I have from Eisenhower's first inauguration. And so we have those, well, I won't say they're in the garage, but I'll say they're up and prominent in the study. Let's put it that way. But that's, so I do know that the Kelleys were in the inaugural parade for Eisenhower's first inauguration.
Yeah. Yeah, that you know, it's interesting how it's changed. Well, you're down there, you see it. You know. Yeah.
Hello. I should add that I have a whole bunch of thimbles that say Kelly for Congress. And I probably have about 25 of them. So hit me up if you'd like one sent in the mail to you. They're very firm plastic and they're good thimbles.
And look good on you too, Melissa.
Hey, Uncle Jim, I was curious. I don't think I've ever asked you this question, Uncle Jim. Could you tell me what your relationship was like with your father?
Good question.
And then actually, Aunt Tech, same question for Aunt Tech. And Aunt Tech, I might ask this question about 15 more times when you're done. Only Hank and Chris and Tad will understand when I'm asking this question.
Beck, you want to go first?
Well, what do you mean? Did I listen to him? Did he listen to me?
How close were you? How close were you to your dad? What was Uncle Jim's relationship with your dad like?
I don't know. I mean, he was always there. I don't know. I don't think it's very was unusual. It was he managed 9 kids very well. So I don't know. It was a great relationship. The whole family, really.
Very political there. Yeah. Answer, very political answer.
Well, that was the answer that Uncle Jim gave me about 10 times 5 years ago when I asked him the same question 10 times. Thanks, Jim.
Well, actually, I would say Jim was pretty spoiled.
Oh,
Don't you think, Jim?
He was the baby, that's why.
As the last after 3 girls?
He was
well, there's no question. I think I was a beneficiary of a spoiled degree of life that my other siblings did not have. I alluded to this earlier when I talked about how my 6 older brothers, you know, had been in the service and mostly had benefited. Graduate school with a GI Bill of Rights, and then my 3 sisters, and then I and the baby. And being the baby, I think I benefited from when Dad started making more money in the coal business. I think I had a advantage of going to 2 good schools, went to St. Vincent Prep for a year, and then I went to Georgetown Prep for 3 years. I dated, I day hopped, but the point is that they're different schools, and I think that as far as my personal relationship with my father, I agree with Tech. He was always there, but when you're down the list of many children, you know, being there is not the same as I'm sure that my father was with my brother Reach. You know, that's, you know, because you go through the things together, and I'm sure that Reach was much more cognizant and aware of financial problems or being tight in the initial era, as opposed to now. I felt I was aware because my siblings would step on my toes anytime I got out of line, and that's the advantage of many children. And but I remember very vividly that once my father living in Kenwood at the time and everything else, and he had loved to play tennis in his younger days, and he got me and a couple of people, and we played tennis together. And you know, that was a real thought process to me of appreciation. And you can't help but have those things stick in your mind. Sometimes I used to drive him a lot. I was very close to him in the later years because I was handy when I was going to St. Vincent College, and he was, anytime politically, I would drive him everywhere. And that was a real pleasure for me. And he and I would be able to talk and with some degree of confidence about individual personalities and other things of that nature. So in that sense, I benefited, and we were close, but the close and that degree is different than the time closest that you have when you think you're growing up with your parent.
So mom's really spoiled too.
That's the question I was asking Uncle Jim 5 years ago. If you would give me that answer, I would not have asked you that 10 more times. Thank you so much.
I must not hear you answer.
And you'd have an ashtray still available to you. It would not have been destroyed. Thank you.
So Uncle Jimmy, I appreciate your background on the oldest and the youngest in the family, but I wanted to ask Aunt Tech, who was the middle kid? And how do they get along with the parents?
I don't know. I'd have to figure out who the middle one was. Who would be the middle?
It was Paul.
Paul was 6, right? Or 5.
5.
Breeze, Bob, Dick.
Paul was the middle kid.
Paul must have been Paul, I guess, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the 5th. Yeah.
Paul. I don't know about Paul. I don't know. He went off, to West Point, and so we didn't see him much in those years.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Sure.
I hear that a lot.
You could? Oh, I wouldn't tell.
All right, I have a question for Tech
Why
and
don't
Jim.
you ask Jim that? He would closer to Paul than I.
For Tech and Jim, what are something that both your mother and father got mad at you for, and how did they handle that?
Dating.
Yeah. Good question.
I don't know. I must have been awful good. I can't remember.
Very political. We can't get the political out of her.
Softball. Yeah.
No, I think now of a lot of things that they could have gotten mad at me, but I can't remember any of them being outstanding. I'm sure I didn't bring the best grades home, but I don't know, Uncle Jim, what did I do wrong?
Well, I'm a little bit different than Tech, I guess, in the sense that she.
I had it pretty nice there for a while because I was the only one left. So I was had my way pretty much.
Well,
Because I was the last one to be married, except for I was the last one, wasn't I?
53?
When were you married, Jim? What year, Jim, were you?
I was married in 57.
57.
Yeah,
Well, you came after me, but I was just about the last. I was the last girl.
You were the last girl.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was
at your wedding, the reception out at the house in Kenwood, we dedicated and blessed the St. Anthony shrine that I had made for.
Oh yeah,
because
you still have that.
I have the statue.
You do.
Yeah, well, the shrine, I tore down the shrine because we sold the place, but the squirrels had eaten it so badly that I found I found an artist to rebuild it. And when we got the price, your sister-in-law, Patricia, was not particularly happy that we'd spend that much money, on. So I said, okay, we'll just keep it in the house. So I've kept the statue for St. Anthony inside so the squirrels can't get to it.
Yeah. It had been out and Mother had such devotion to St. Anthony.
She did that, very much.
Yeah.
I have a question for both Uncle Jim and Aunt Tech. It's Manyeka. Yay! Hi. Okay, so Nana's bread.
Nana's bread.
I only ever saw Tanty make it. So, but Nana did actually make it at one point, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, Nana made that bread at least once a week.
Oh yeah.
As we were all growing up, and there was just a mainstay of our diet, basically. You know, we had a neighbor, Bob Marshbank, who is a single fellow, but he was a contemporary of some of my older brothers, but he knew when Mother was baking the bread, and he'd come over to the house, walk in right away, and talk about Mrs. Kelley. How about you made some bread? Can I have some butter? And he would sit down and slice his bread, and it was. And I gotta say, there's some of you cousins who try to emulate it. My son Brendan tries to bake something like it, and Tech, I don't know about you, but I don't think anybody ever baked it like Mother did. Tanty came pretty close, but
I used to make it all the time when the children were there, but you have to make about 6 or 7 loaves in that recipe. But we loved it.
Well, I got to tell you, Uncle Jimmy, I think our sister Monica comes as close as Nana ever came. She
right?
gets my vote.
How often does she do it?
I don't do it as much.
Not as often enough.
Yes, now I got to make more to prove myself.
Well, you're gonna have to do it more often.
I always like the pizza
Well,
sauce.
we get that damn farmhouse up there when I win the lottery. We'll make it up at the farmhouse.
All right, I got another question. All right,
Yes,
my mother married a Kelley. She was good friends with your sister Marcy. And when her mother or her grandmother found out that Marcy had 6 brothers, she said to my mom, pick one of those, that's going to be your husband. So my mom apparently had dated everybody, Jimmy, but you on the boys, and chose my dad. That's what I hear.
I never heard that.
She told me something. She said that they lived such a strict life, and that when she would go over to the Kelley house, that there was parties every night. That place was crazy, people coming and going. And she said it was a very lively place. So my question is that true? That's question number one.
Who was it that said that?
My mother said that about going over.
Bella said that.
Bella did. And then the other question, the follow-up question is, during Prohibition and other times, how strict did the family follow the rules of no alcohol?
Well, the refrigerator in the basement was, actually was in the kitchen with a beer barrel. You know, Dad always, he kept a refrigerator.
Uncle Dick's.
Uncle Dick.
Right.
Who does?
No, we're talking about the Prohibition time.
Well, that's when, that's when well, that's all Prohibition, isn't it?
they did experiment during Prohibition with making the malt beverage, but not to great extent, because there was enough to drink it all that they made in the house. So the public didn't become aware of it, so to speak. As far as the other thing about your grandmother Flood, she was a wise woman, and if she did tell your mother to exercise judgment, whatever judgment your mother used was very excellent.
And Joe, by the way, I think Marcy did tell me that same thing, that Bella dated all the boys, well, except for Jim, dated all the boys before she married your father.
Well, she dated a few. I don't think she dated all of them. But I like the story.
It's a great story. Why would you ruin it?
Because
but what about
I didn't like to be exempted from it.
What about Aunt Tech? Tell us more about Uncle Dick's. He's got a lot of kegs and stuff in the house. Oh, Aunt Tech.
Back to the GTs.
She has what?
Uncle Dick's, remember the get-togethers at Uncle Dick's.
Oh, what about it? And I knew about it.
We were there.
And Uncle Dick's?
I think you need to ask Irene. I think Irene has that keg refrigerator.
The kegerator.
Oh, yeah.
The kegerator.
That was funny. That was right off the kitchen. Can still see it now.
Hey, I just wanted to do a time check because I don't want to tire out Dad and Aunt Tech. And if Dad and Aunt Tech would indulge us, we would very much like to have another session at some point soon with more questions. If that would be something that you would entertain, that would be great.
Well,
I can't imagine what we forgot.
Yeah, we could ask them the same question.
Hey, Jim, do you know of anything they forgot?
I have a question.
Well, I just think if for no other reason that to in this day and age to have a gathering, albeit all communication wise, that it'd be a refreshing embracement of our genealogy.
Yeah, Jim, I wanted to ask you something. You mentioned about running for Congress. Didn't Brother Hill, didn't he run for Congress once?
Yes, he did. Right after Dad died, he ran.
Oh, I did not know that.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
Did he run or was he appointed to the seat?
No,
Who got his seat?
No appointing to that seat. They have to run.
Yeah, usually they do appoint or offer to the widow.
Well, they do that as a matter of courtesy or someone else.
Yeah,
And
but they,
other
yeah,
people, our brother Reed, some people thought that he would be a logical person, but the political powers at the time overrode that in the sense that they had other plans. And they may have been good plans in a sense because the person they chose was a state senator, and he sustained the office for a good period of time. The other thing about I'm not particularly comfortable if you're watching the news these days. This congresswoman from Michigan, Dingell. She's a widow of John Dingell.
John Dingell, yeah.
And John had served his Congress. He was the dean of the Congress when he died. And before that, his father had been a congressman for 25 or 30 years. And I knew his brother, Jimmy. But it's almost unbelievable some family could sustain themselves in elected office that length of time, but it happens. These things can happen, and I think there's a great age difference between the current Congresswoman Dingell and her departed deceased husband. That's okay too, but the fact is that elected processes bring very peculiar results. Now, and I want to commend all of you for participating, and no one has brought up the issue, talking about politics. I'll raise the issue, and that is that, to be able to think in terms of to what you're exposed as you come up in life, in a political family in particular, but in just aware of POD civics, to witness what we've all witnessed in the last 5 or 6 years at the national scene is very enlightening, and it's frightening in a sense. At least I'm in the frightened category. I was dating a lovely lady until I found out that she was Catholic, good, boom, 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 boom. And she's a Trumpster.
Oh.
And I couldn't, I said, how can you support?
God love her.
We all fell in love with her. Remember that night, Uncle Jim?
Yes, I
did.
We fell in love with her that night.
I was going to move into that story because the same woman I had, and we had a pretty good gathering here at my home in Greensburg. We reinterred, I think, your father and buried your mother at the Catholic cemetery, and all the Browns were here and a bunch of others. And so I introduced this woman and told the story about how I said something about the idea that for whom did you vote? And she said, Trump. And all these, Hank and all her brothers and sisters, we stood up and yelled and screamed and gave the cheer. And I thought, I've lost them too.
Well, Uncle Jimmy, you bring up an interesting scenario, but the question really needs to be, is there room in the Democratic Party today for the Kellys who believe in family, who believe in life begins at conception, who believes in the integrity of the family? This is what we need to confront. A lot of my colleagues, a lot of my friends have abandoned my Democratic Party. And I'm often standing by myself for the principles that my grandfather stood for when he was in Congress. And I'm assuming all my uncles and aunts and all my cousins and siblings. And it's a real shame that our Democratic Party has been we've lost. Let's put it that way.
See, I restate the issue because I truly believe it has to be restated, to be honest. The issue is not pro-life, because most people who are professing politically pro-life are really professing to believe pro-birth. If you believe in pro-life, you have to be a supporter of that life as long as it's here thereafter. Okay? And if you fail to do that, you've abandoned your idea of saying you're pro-life.
I need to get off. Sorry.
Hey,
You're,
listen.
you're so full of bullshit. It's ridiculous.
Hey, it's 4:08. Well, it's 4:09. It's 6:09 on the East Coast, but I want to protect our time limit here, and let's schedule another one. But I know that we could talk forever, but I want to just be very attentive to the time commitment and to the energy levels here. If that's all right with everybody, we were going to run until your 6 o'clock on the East Coast. It's now 6:10. So I just, fair warning, I wanted to, kind of truncate it at the hour so that we don't run on, so that we're fresh and we can do it again.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Let's do it again. It was so awesome. Please.
I'm sorry that my comments called somebody to abandon. I don't know who it was that left, but I'm sorry that we.
6:30. Uncle Jim, it was Hank. Don't worry about it.
We don't listen to Hank, Uncle Jim. Don't worry about him.
The conversation will go a lot better without him.
We're hoping he'll not be back for the next conversation.
Thank you, all of you, for participating. I love you all, and keep up the spirit of the good Lord.
Love you, Uncle Jim.
Love you, Uncle Jim.
Love you too.
Thanks, Melissa. Love you.
Look forward to the next one.
Hey, Bob, Lacey,
you.
do your text.
Thank you, Uncle Jim. It was wonderful.
Thank you, guys.
Very
Thank you
enjoyable.
so much.
Everybody.
Thank you all. Whoever did this, and Aunt Tech, Uncle Jim, we love you.
And thank you, Dick, for arranging.
Thanks, everybody.
It. Great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dick.
Thanks, Dick. Thank you, Dick.
Take care.
Yeah, who's left?
Everybody's hanging out.
All right, have yourself a good week.
Thanks, Dick.
Yeah, that was okay, huh?
Yeah, it was great.
Well, we should try to get Aunt Terry maybe with the next one, and I don't know, Margaret, if you've got anybody in your line or any other lines, Rick, bring them in.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Your Uncle Jim, he's a lively one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
That was very, that was very, I was glad to be part of this.
Yeah.
And everyone was so respectful.